All right, ZBA, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome to the Town of East Hampton work session for February 11th, 2025. We'll go right into our post-hearing decisions this evening, and the first one, the applicant is Jessica Houghton at 101 South Forest Street in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-28-9-21.1. Size and location is 47,726 square feet at 101 South Forest Street, Country Club Estates at Montauk, Section 2, lots 21 and 22, map number 5152 in Montauk. The description is to allow a pergola and bench, brick steps, and 175 square foot second floor living space and 175 square foot first floor living space to remain, and to replace a 532 square foot deck on a parcel of land containing freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town, and 5 variances are required for this application. Variances of 37 feet, 62 feet, 70 feet, and 73 feet are required from 255-430 of the town code to allow a pergola and a bench to remain 63 feet, bricks and steps to remain 38 feet, second floor living space to remain 30 feet, and first floor living space to remain 27 feet from freshwater wetlands, all where 100-foot setbacks are required. One variance of 85 feet is required to remove and construct 523 square foot deck in place 15 feet from freshwater wetlands where 100-foot is required. The lead on this was member Johan. We'll ask you to take over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Houghton. The hearing, you'll remember, was January 7th, 2025. We were working from a survey dated July 24th, 2024. And later on, we're given a shaded potential revegetation area plan at the hearing, which outlines some of what we'll be discussing here. The applicant was represented by Tara Burke of Lighthouse Land Planning. The building drawings from Montauk Design Solutions dated July 27, 2024. This proposed project requires an NRSP and 5 variances. 4 of the variances relate to work done previously to the current ownership on this parcel. 1 variance is to shrink and reconstruct a deck that does not show up on earlier surveys and was constructed without the benefit of a building permit. The current ownership of the parcel dates to January 2022. The original building permit for the house was issued on November 26, 1980, and the only CFO on this property was granted on September 24th, 1981. This property has never been in front of the ZBA before this particular application. Based on aerial photos, the enclosures at the second floor of the residence seem to have been done between 1988 and 1992. These areas were originally deck spaces. A greenhouse at the first floor was enclosed at approximately the same time. So relative to these changes, this application seeks to legalize these improvements that were completed without building permits. It also seeks to gain approval to remove a large staircase to the south and an adjacent brick patio and a portion of an existing deck that sits closest to an eastern wetland, and then to rebuild the existing deck situated at the southeast corner of the residence. That deck does not appear in the 1981 C of O, but does show up on 1983 aerial photos. Additionally, a portion of a drainage easement has been cleared, and a significant area adjacent to the wetlands to the east has been overcleared, with some hardscape having been installed in that area. We received a response to the TAM from Tara Burke dated December 27, 2024, that we received on January 2nd, 2025. In that letter, she points out that by removing the hot tub portion of the deck, the structure would now sit 15 feet from wetlands. The remaining structure would now sit 15 feet from wetlands instead of the current 8 feet. But of course, that is only offering to remove a nonconformity that was constructed without a building permit. The offer was also made to remove the large unsafe staircase to the southeast of the same deck, along with its associated brick patio. Additionally, a walkway that connects this to South Fox Street while passing through the wetlands to the east will be removed. Currently, the parcel is cleared to 21,099 square feet, where 18,213 square feet is allowed. The parcel is deemed to be pre-existing and non-conforming, however. In Tara's memo, the applicant has offered 2,900 square feet of revegetation, which would bring the parcel into compliance in terms of the overclearing. Relative to the deck that the applicant is looking to reconstruct, their letter points out that the original blueprint filed with the town included the sliding glass doors that currently empty onto the deck, and that although the deck does not appear on the C of O survey, a deck of some sort would have had to have existed in order for the C of O to have been issued. Additionally, a staircase would likely have been included at that time. Questions were asked at the hearing about the condition and the location of the existing septic system, which subsequently was shown to consist of a septic tank and 5 shallow pools, and is located, according to the town planner, in its best possible location. When pressed about voluntarily installing a modern IAWTS system, the applicant cited the expense and the potential site disruptions as factors in deciding not to install the newer system at this time. The major mitigation offered, however, is the 2,900 square foot of vegetation that will act as a buffer to the wetlands to the south and the east along the walkway that leads to South Box Street. I think that the request to rebuild the deck in question to be a reasonable one, in that the C of O for the property could not have been issued without some manner of a deck having been in place, and that the configuration of the rectangular deck to be rebuilt is a fairly reasonable one. I think that the improvements made in closing in the second floor decks and the first floor greenhouse would have been a fair candidate for approval by this board if accompanied with a significant reprint plan had they appeared before the ZBA. I find that the entry pergola is not significant enough to significantly affect the condition of the northeast wetlands. I also feel that although the staircase to the south and the brick patio were illegally constructed, that their removal still represents an improvement to the environment. Most importantly, I think that the 2,900 square foot of additional buffer to be installed along the margins of the wetlands will provide a substantial improvement to the current conditions on the property. This is a parcel that requires 5 variants, but 4 of them are within the existing footprint of the house, and the deck at the southeast corner of the house seems to have had enough history related to its original blueprints and proper functioning of the EFO of the CO'd east and south. Okay, let me get this straight. The proper functioning of the CO'd east and south facing glass doors, that I am willing to accept the revegetation plan as mitigation to approve this application. In terms of the code, looking at conditions under 255-430, asked whether or not the grant of the variance will cause an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood. I don't think that in this case it does. Whether or not the benefits sought by the applicant are achieved by some method more feasible. Not under these current circumstances, I don't think it's possible. It's constricted by wetlands in more than one location, and the house is already placed in the most vulnerable spot on the property. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, yes, it's substantial, but it's also unavoidable under these circumstances, I believe. Whether the grant of the variance will have an adverse effect on the impact of the physical environment and the conditions of the neighborhood, I think the second floor additions will not, and I think the deck is basically necessary in order for the sliders to function. Whether or not the difficulty causing the applicant request, let me just get this right here. The area variance was self-created. The deck was in place from some period of time before this, and the house is functioning with it. I think it's self-created in the sense that they want to replace it, but not necessarily one that's an ask that goes beyond what is reasonable in this case. And then under 255-51 D, preservation of natural resources, I think that the improvements that are being made here in removing some of a structure that was illegally placed, I'll give that, but nonetheless, they are being removed. And I think that the buffer is a significant factor in helping to preserve the environment. Then under 2, alternative designs entail that. I think that the alternative designs on their part is to try to decrease the size of the staircase that's facing south and make it as small as possible and draw it back into there. Under compatibility, I don't see that this is incompatible with the other structures in the neighborhood, and whether the house A house is always a disturbance under environmental protection, but the house exists, and they're looking to make these improvements with a give back of the 2,900 square feet. I think that's initially, this is a large ask, that we have to have large variances being asked for, but they're not variances that are not related to where the house is now structured or now located. So given all of that, I'm willing to approve this application at this time.
Thank you. Terry?
Hopefully, okay. That was a lot, but, okay, I do agree with my fellow board member. As stated, these are changes that happened over the last 40, 50 years. That permits, but they're not major changes. However, they are very high. As far as the variances required from the distance, the steps and the second floor living, the first floor living space, they're all large variances, 70 feet, 73, 62 for the steps on the northeast. After hearing, reading Tara's memo and her presentation, it says something over time, and she said the homeowner who purchased the house in 2021, where after all of this was done already, came to her for one thing, which was to replace that existing deck on the southeast side of the house it's also dilapidated and would need to be, so they wanted to replace that in kind. And then all these other things came to light as the agent looked at the files and the records. Ultimately, I think that I'm glad the homeowner decided she wants to rectify all of this and get this legalized and get a C of O on it. The one thing I was a little iffy on were the steps on the northeast corner. That really didn't seem to me. It's a 62-foot variance. And however, ultimately, I think I'm going to approve that also. The septic systems are, the leaching fields are underneath these steps. So I guess if that ever needs to be replaced, those steps would have to be removed anyway. On the NRSP side of this, I think it will improve the environmental status of the property. It will eliminate some of the bad things environmentally on the property. The walkway, the stone walkway going from the house over to the side street of South Fox, the existing bricks, all the things noted in red. And as far as the steps that they're redoing associated with the platform on the steps up there, they are shortening them and making them 4 feet wide and taking off the rest. So, and at that, it's still, an 85-foot variance basically for that deck. But again, with the mitigation offered of the wetlands, of the scenic easement, did they give us a scenic easement?
No.
No, not a scenic
No,
easement.
not a scenic.
They have the drainage easement, but that's already there. With the revegetation of the 2,900 feet of revegetation, I found significant and good mitigation for this project. And I'm happy that the homeowner came in and wants to make everything right. And so I too am going to approve it. I think it does meet the standards, as already mentioned. The variances were quite large, but they're there. They've been there for a long time, so they don't seem to be negatively impacting the environment at this point in time. So I too am improving the entire project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am in agreement with my fellow Montauk board members, and I won't repeat all the standards. I thought member Johan went through the variance standards. Well, I agree with his reading of all of them. And again, I do believe we have a deck here that has somewhere between 1981 and 1983, a very long time, and nothing has come out that the presence of that deck itself has had a negative impact on the wetlands or the environmental conditions on the property. I am happy to see, I know it was a increased nonconformity done by a prior person, but I'm happy to see that section of the deck. I think this is really important, removing that and the hot tub. This seems to be the most natural place for a deck, given how we heard the house was designed with the sliders back there. I think the repositioning and sort of shrinking of the steps to the deck is important. And so I think all the variances requested, though substantial, nothing is new here. It is legalizing. And in exchange, I do agree that the buffer, basically from top to bottom is an important feature. I just want to clarify, I believe there's that area that says area to be allowed to grow back naturally. And I believe Ms. Burke also said that they would consider revegetating that as well, as opposed to letting it grow. So I'm not sure if I don't think that square footage was counted in the 2,900, so we should just clarify that. I would accept that additional. I did raise during the public hearing the idea of some scenic easement. Nothing came of that, but it would have been nice to see that protection. And I don't think there was a nexus to asking or compelling them to change the septic at this point. So, and from a natural resources special permit standards, I don't see anything here that incrementally degrades or puts anything in peril. And as discussed, I do think there are improvements here that improve the environmental conditions and the protection of the wetlands. So all in, I'm approving the application in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
I think the applicant is attempting to clean up this property of existing conditions that were created long ago by a previous owner, probably, I think, over 40 years. And the way I always analyze this sort of request is to ask myself, would I have approved this had it come before us for relief? I don't think I would have approved an 85-foot variance to construct a 523 square foot deck 15 feet from a freshwater wetland. The deck now is, I think, at 8 feet. However, this, in my view, is a unique situation, and any approval, I don't feel, will set a precedent. It appears that aerials for this deck show that the deck was constructed prior to the 1984 legislation. What we're looking at, it was built without a permit. They are now removing the larger staircase and proposing a new staircase that is parallel to the rear of the house and deck. They are removing the hot tub corner and brick patio, which will bring this structure 15 feet from the wetland, where currently the deck is 8 feet from a wetland. As a condition of approval, the applicant has agreed to revegetate that area, which is what you were talking about, Member Maring, right?
The part that's sort of double hatched, it's got the green dots in it.
Revegetate that area after structures have been removed. So that's probably plus the 2,900.
I think so.
I think so too.
That's what it was.
I feel the increased living space with the second-story deck and the greenhouse area converted to living space will increase by 345 square feet to a house that is currently approximately 2,200 square feet. I don't see either of these having a negative impact on the environment. The concrete steps and the walkways through the wetlands are also being removed as mitigation. A wooden staircase bin within the wetlands has been removed on the south side of the property near the drainage easement. The applicant has agreed to revegetate the south side of the parcel behind the drainage easement, where there was also clearing. And yes, as what's already been stated, they're adding an added vegetation buffer along the southwest wetland boundary up to the removed brick patio, and a vegetated buffer will be provided along the northeastern side of the wetland, totaling 2,900 square feet, bringing the property into compliance for clearing limits. I think there's been a lot of cooperation on the part of the applicant, and to bring this property into more compliance with the town code. I think the mitigation being offered helps the project to improve the current conditions, and for these reasons, I will be approving their request for variances and a natural resource special permit.
Thank you. I agree with my fellow board members. With all the statements added, I don't have anything else to add to it, so we'll We have a unanimous approval.
Yeah. I have a comment, though. There were 3 different versions of the same dated survey for 7/24/2024. So there's only one that has the septic location, which they didn't have originally. So the date's the same, but if we could use that one, and I guess the other one also dated the same, but it doesn't have the septic on it, is the one with the green that Tara wrote in.
Yeah, the shaded area.
Huh?
The one with the shaded area for the
The
revet.
shaded area, but that's the one that doesn't show the septic.
Yeah.
There's one without that does, and that should be the one they'd use now that they know where it is.
Thank you. Next, we have 124 Beach Lane LLC at 124 Beach Lane in Wayne Scott, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-202-2-8.2 and 9.1. The size and location is 3.2 acres at 124 Beach Lane in Wayne Scott. The description is to demolish an existing residence and swimming pool and to construct a new 5,898 square foot, one-story residence with 3,571 square foot of decks and terraces, a swimming pool, a new sanitary system on a parcel of land located within the town's jurisdiction of wetlands and containing barrier dunes, beaches, and beach vegetation. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code. The residence and swimming pool have been proposed 100.4 feet from the barrier dune crest. The swimming pool and sanitary system have been proposed 115.2 feet and more than 200 feet respectively from wetlands. Zoning district is A2 residence, AE flood zone, elevation 16, VE flood zone, elevation 18, and the secret class is type 2. We're gonna do this, give me a second here. Gonna go through the documents and then I'm gonna turn it over to the vice chair to lead off on it. The documents, the latest documents as depicted in the applicant's memorandum of law or response to the TAM, the resubmitted documents. I just want to go through that list. It's a letter from Land Use Ecological Services dated January 15th, 2025. Projective narrative prepared by Land Use Ecological Services dated January 15th, 2025. Survey prepared by Walbridge Surveyors dated January 15th, 2025. New York State DEC permit dated 22/1/2024. Septic plan prepared by Jeffrey T. Butler dated January 14th, 2025. Proposed house plans prepared by Barnes Coy Architects. Technical analysis dated 1/12/2025. Post-sand conditions prepared by Land Use Ecological Services dated January 9th, 2025. Aerial timeline, Land Use Ecological Services dated January 9th, 2025. Habitat map prepared by Land Use Ecological Services dated January 15th, 2025. The native planting plan provided by Land Use Ecological Services dated January 15th, 2025. And that's it relative to the application at hand. So, Vice Chair.
Ready? Okay. Thank you. All the structures that are proposed are landward of the coastal erosion hazard area and are greater than 100 feet from freshwater wetlands and are greater than 100 feet landward of the topographic crest of the dune. There are no variance relief is needed for this project because the project complies with all wetland setbacks, CEHA and dune setbacks and zoning dimensional requirements, including setbacks, building and lot coverage, gross floor area, and clearing. The existing improvements now on the property, the pool is following non-conforming distances from the dune crest. The pool is approximately 79 feet. The decking is approximately 68 feet. The house is approximately 82 feet, and the septic is 78. All are dimensionally non-conforming and unlikely to be permitted for construction where they are located under today's current standards. The proposed house will be situated approximately the following distances from the dune crest. It'll be 104 feet from the proposed deck, 101 feet for the proposed pool, and 171 feet for the proposed nitrogen-reducing septic system. The house is designed to be one-story because of the difficulty and for a two-story since it's located to meet all the flood zone, pyramid, and height regulations in East Hampton Town. While the house need only be to 18 feet per FEMA, the client has elected to build it at elevation 20 to ensure it will be resilient in the face of sea level rise. A neighborhood analysis, after conducting an analysis of the neighboring homes, it did become clear that the proposed house will continue to be consistent with these characteristics. After a lengthy discussion with the client is willing to incorporate all the mitigation that's offered in the TAM, including the proposed scenic easement, which I'm going to read out loud. The scenic easement shall be established 50 feet landward of the primary dune crest, extending to at least the toe of the dune. The language of the easement should allow for the installation of a 4-foot wide walkway, subject to all necessary approvals. The easement, along with the approved surveys depicting the location of the scenic easement, shall be submitted in acceptable form to the Zoning Board of Appeals. In response to the TAM's concern, the pool has been rotated to a north-south position, which represents a 23.7 feet from the edge of wetland. The location of the proposed dwelling also represents a 45-foot retreat landward of the dune from existing conditions. Accessory structures are proposed 101 feet from the crest of the dune, where existing accessory structures are only 68 feet landward of the dune. The location of the proposed residential structure is a significant improvement over what exists there today. Existing clearing on the site is within the allowable limits, and clearing will remain within the allowable limits post-construction. Existing clearing is 11,394 square feet. Proposed clearing for construction is 23,122 square feet. And post-construction and revegetation clearing is proposed to be 15,310 square feet, where 25,454 square feet of clearing is permitted on the project site. There will be no lawn. The current application for a 5,898 square foot residence is not only smaller than both of the previously approved residences by this board, it's also situated further from the dune. And those other approvals by the board were two-story residences. I think that the IA system will be very valuable to this site. The proposed project is retreating the new proposed structures further away from the mean high water line. The project is compatible with the town's goals for protecting natural resources, the upgraded septic system, the proposed very robust planting plan, addition of dry wells for the collection of runoff, relocation of all structures to be further away from the dune and mean high water line, and for the house being brought into FEMA compliance are all very beneficial to the site and in keeping with the standards set out in NRSP code. There's really nothing in the record. Well, let me go beyond that first. The project is compatible with its surroundings and with the character of the neighborhood and of the community in general, particularly scale and overall appearance. Regarding visibility, scale, and overall appearance, the architects have tried to design a house that is, a huge improvement to what is currently there. The quality of the groundwater will be drastically improved with an IA upgrade and a new planting plan. The areas of disturbance around the existing and proposed structures will be replanted with native shrubs. Approximately 14,878 square feet of the property will be planted with native shrubs. The mitigation has been incorporated to protect natural features, the habitat, wetlands, and wildlife. The existing dune is stable, and the residence meets all velocity FEMA flood zone requirements. So retreating 45 feet landward of existing structures will help stand up to the coastal storms and erosion. The proposed house, decking, pool, and septic are all further from the dune crest and wetlands than what actually currently exists. And of course, the installation of an IA system is a substantial variance. The project will be conforming to clearing, and this is important to me because I did look this up on CARP. The dune is stable, and the East Hampton Coastal Assessment and Resiliency Plan, CARP, designates this stretch of beach and dune as stable. So for these reasons, I see no reason or evidence in the record that this project will degrade, pollute, or damage the natural features. And I feel with all the mitigation being offered and all of the mitigation requested by the planning department, including a scenic easement and a strict moratorium on construction activities, the application does meet the standards for grant of an NRSP, and I am approving it in its entirety with those specific conditions of approval that were outlined in the technical analysis memo.
Thank you. Ed? Yeah, thank you. I'm not going to repeat all of that statistical information. Thank you for putting it in, Vice Chair. I think that was all important. I have all those same statistics in front of me. But I will say that there were several key factors in my decision here. One is obviously the landward move of the house. The town has encouraged it. We've had recent other applications we've favored for the same reason. Moving back from the crest of the dune is always important to us. I think that that retreat was the opening offer here that really makes you think that they're looking to do what we would like to see them do with this particular parcel if they are going to do a redevelopment. I think that you have to go immediately to the 99 ZBA decision and followed by the 2018. In 99, a 6,588 square foot two-story house was approved. In 2018, an 8,490 or 48 square foot two-story house was approved with associated deckings and pool. Currently, the applicant is looking for 5,898 square foot. It's smaller and further from the dunes and with a much more extensive re-veg plan. It was already outlined by the Vice Chair. I think that the IA obviously is now more conforming, and I think that the general attitude towards the land was been, and the placing of the house is important. I do want to say that relative to the height, that came up with a neighbor's complaint and was answered by the architect, Chris Coy. If the house was set at VE18, he made the point that that allowed for 2 foot of freeboard and then a structure. By the time we're done adding those together, we come up to that number that was the complaint for the neighbor who wondered if it was being built higher than it had to be built. It's built at 20 foot point, I guess 9, or is that, no, I guess 9, 20 foot point 9 feet above sea level, which is, according to the architect and working with the VE18 standards, is the minimum height that would have to be. Then after that, he did point out that it's a 10-foot ceiling inside, not 10 or 11, is what was suggested. And that in designing a house to fit this site, that's about what had to be done just to make it work. And that's making it work with something that's not particularly excessive. 10 foot on a house to scale inside dimension is not overdoing it. I think that, as was mentioned already, and again, I won't repeat all of these square footages, but I do think they were impressive to us. I think that the 2 previous approvals for larger homes has said something. That means another board before us looked at this and thought there was an improvement one way or another. That's twice. We don't have to review exactly their language, but we know that they reviewed it carefully and came up with an approval. Now we're being asked for a third take on this, and I think from those 2 approvals, we have an even more improved now. Conditions are always changing, and I think Brian Frank spent some time talking about the volatility potential of here, but as was mentioned by the Vice Chair, CARP does consider this an area of less concern. I know that we had the discussion of what's going on westward of there. Given the location of this property, given what's being offered up, I think it's an intelligent plan. It's well thought out. I think that what's happened here is the retreat from the dune is something that we constantly are looking for. It's something the town recommends. I think that they sort of hit all the buttons on this that we're looking for when we see a redevelopment. The redevelopment comes in front of us. It's had some starts and stops over the last 20-some years. It looks like this one may go forward. It's certainly one that's an improvement on the past. And for that reason, I'm willing to approve this application at this time. Jane?
Oh, thank you. So I understand, I'm just going to go to the punchline. I am going to approve this application, but I do want to go through my thinking because it is somewhat different than my fellow board members in terms of how I was looking at it. So I understand fully the concept of a current ZBA board's regard for prior ZBA board's decisions. And with respect to this parcel, clearly there was what I believe at the time was unanimous approval granted 7 years ago at a time that was, pretty fresh off or after Hurricane Sandy, which I think was very fresh in people's mind about what happened to that shoreline. So of course I considered this application, and as my fellow board members have so far, relative to that 2017 approval. But I also, taking the prior decision for a different project, as I understand it, does not necessarily require me as a current board member to completely defer or you completely to that decision. And as such, I'm also evaluating this proposed project as a new and discrete application, and I'm evaluating it, I evaluated closely relative to the current conditions on the property, and of course how it relates in totality to the NRSP safeguards. So I just want to go through a couple statistics, and objective factual elements of this application relative to the existing conditions and even to the last one. So clearly there was a moderate 9% modulation of GFA in this application versus 2017. There's about a 14.5% reduction in the total decking number, square footage. The pool remains at a north-south orientation as the prior application as it was approved. However, it does become a one-story house, and that means that with the expansion of the house and the expansion of the decking versus what exists, the coverages really increase very significantly, and that's where I took pause. So building coverage expands massively to 4.6 times what exists. I understand that it's set back further from the dune crest, but it's also the building coverage also increases 35% from the 2017 application, and the total coverage also is expanding, I think 22% from the prior approval and determination. So those two things, I think about coverage as relating very specifically to the standards of the NRSP as a potential degrading or detrimental factor. And I was also a little bit concerned about the during construction 23,000 plus clearing, although the final after re-veg is 15,310, which is also an expansion from where we are. And the span of exposure and the discussion about the development within the Limwat line. However, what put me over to approving the application is I do understand that the decision, although the prior approved house was on pilings, the decision to build it to the VE 18 standards appears to be important. And also, the site is not pristine in terms of the vegetation. I mean, some of the other applications this board has seen, we've been looking at very pristine dune lands. So that plus the scenic easement put me into the camp of approval, even though I think that this application struggled was a little bit off to the new parts of 255, 111 that were noted in the TAM and by Vice Chair Savarese as, being put into place more recently. And also the standard about, were smaller or other designs that could have actually improved the site even further with a more condensed coverages. But all in, I just wanted to go through my thinking, and clearly the fact that there is that 2017 approval, it's hard for me to ignore that completely. And I also did want to make the issue of that was raised about the height, because I obviously took in the concerns. However, because there's no height variance in this application, I just don't feel I have any jurisdiction to even really address that. And that's, a issue between neighbors. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Terry?
Okay, what's left? Okay, well, we'll go with the bottom line right away, too. I'm also going to approve the application. Like Member Meering, though, I did have a lot of pauses in this in making my decision for the same reason. The building coverage really bothered me at first. And I know I was part of the 2018 decision, and for a while I was like, oh, this was pretty big, and did I make a mistake back then? But anyway, that's in the past. And ultimately, I think this does improve the environmental. Again, I'll restate just some of the things. The movement back from the dune, now it will be entirely landward of the Seha line, although not very far. But the greatest setbacks for the dune, from the dune, the revegetation is robust, and the planner was in agreement with the re-veg plan. And the septic, actually, the IA system is going to be more than 200 feet away from the dune, so it's out of all jurisdiction, even NRSP. I was impressed by the height. That they're going to build the house to the VE 18 standard. And that was one of the questions, as mentioned, that a neighbor, that an agent, Andy Hammer, had come in questioning that height. But as Member Johan mentioned, the architect, Chris Coy, did get up and explained very carefully how they came to that. And it all makes sense. It relates to, I guess, the DEC standards and the Limwa line, because this property is all south of the Limwa line. And because of that, I know in the planner's memo that they brought up about the Article 34 DEC permit that would be needed for this to accomplish that because of the Limwa. And they already do have the approval received from that. The rotation of the pool was a plus in response to the TAM and moving it farther. I believe it was 24 or 29 feet farther from the wetlands of Wainscott Pond. And there's the whole thing with the clearing, the revegetation brings the clearing down to 15,310. There was a discussion of construction protocol, and the planner about the chair brought up the construction protocol once the demolition is done, redoing the fencing and the protective fencing. And the planner, Brian, did say that he's willing, if this is approved and the condition, that the planning department will do a sketch of the fencing for the demo and the construction phase of this. The 50-foot easement is also another plus as part of the mitigation. And again, recommended with the planning department just to do the normal 2-foot walkway allowance that we normally do in this kind of situation. So I do think it meets all the the natural resource standards, and I'm going to approve it.
Thank you. I too agree. I also had pause on the GFA and the coverage. I mean, but if you look at the response to the TAM, the agents or the response to the TAM, they state this: the reason for the increase in coverage is because the home has been designed as a one-story house. This was necessary to be compliant with all the FEMA, Town of East Hampton flood zone height and pyramid regulations, be consistent and proportional with the neighborhood, and limit blocking the view corridor for neighbors by proposed construction. I think that's a reasonable response. In this case, I think the environmental conditions here, I was also impressed where they placed the septic system in that flag lot to increase the distances to all wetlands. I think this is a good application for approval. I also want to reiterate the two-step limiting fence south of the residence. Should make that a condition of the approval.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm thankful that you did mention about rotating the pool. I had it as a note, I didn't say it, but that was a key factor in early on. Some of the complaints from the planning department, and the fact that they responded that way was a positive.
And we do have to remember, this is not a small property. It's
No.
3.8, it's 3.2 acres, right?
acres.
So,
Well,
Buildable as well.
yeah,
when I was looking at
it's still
the,
constrained, but
yeah, when I was looking at we were concerned about the dune stability and everything, and yeah, it does conform to the CARP standard. But also in Exhibit A and B, the land use, they gave the GISs showing the dune, and that convinced me that, it is really a stable dune.
so, thank you. All right.
I have to recuse on the,
Yes, Member Meering is,
I am
we're going
recused,
to
I mean.
discuss Devon Yacht Club right now. Member Meering is recused from it, so we'll wait for her.
I hate when I get a agenda and then I don't know where I stuck it.
I do that all the time.
I asked for one,
You
now I don't
clipped
know.
it to something.
I know.
Next on the agenda is Devon Yacht Club, 300 Abraham's Landing Road, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-127-3-16 and 17. Board members, the reason why this, normally this comes to us in form of a hearing for us to make a decision, but it didn't come to us with that purpose. The purpose of it becoming before us was that it was before the planning board, and in the planning board's, it's over a couple of year time, I believe right now, but so the planning board had got to a point where they wanted our recommendations to look at this project and come back with our recommendations. So with that, I know the agenda doesn't list the variances. I'm going to take time and do that. I'm also going to take time to go through this project in somewhat of a detail, going through highlights of the documents before us. So with that, let me just read as if I'm reading it into the record. Give me a second. So the size and location is 6.61 acres at 300 Abraham's Landing Road, Amagansett. The description is a site plan, special permit, natural resources special permit, and variance applications have been made to demolish the existing buildings, accessory structures, and infrastructure, and to rebuild and update the structures on the Devon Yacht Club property. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code, and 20 variances, in addition to any other relief necessary or required for this application as follows. Variance from 255-1110 of 25.9 feet for clubhouse where 70 feet is required, 47 feet and 73.8 feet for decks and concrete pad respectively, where 80 feet is required from Abraham's Landing Road. Variances from 255-440 of 106.7 feet for clubhouse, 130.9 feet for decks, walkways, 96.1 feet for bathhouse, 91.1 feet for sailing center, 51 feet for northwest tennis court, 36 feet for northeast tennis court, 97 feet for concrete pad generator, and 150 feet for new deck on walkway to dock where 150 feet is required. Variances from 255-430 of 88 feet for staff residence, 58.8 feet for workshop, 61.6 feet for northwest tennis court, 56 feet for northeast tennis court, 62 feet for generator, concrete pad, 32 feet for transformer, RPC, 51 feet for parking where 100 foot is required, and 90 feet and 80 feet for clubhouse and bathhouse, sailing center, septic systems respectively, where 100 feet, 50 feet is required. Zoning district is A5 residence, VE velocity flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. This is a involved project, probably one of the most complicated ones we've seen in a long time. And it's been through a lengthy process at this point. Sort of the files are voluminous. So what I'm going to do, in looking at how to go through this, I decided to take primarily three primary documents, but in saying that three documents, it's inclusive of all the documents before and in between them. And I think you'll get it as I go along. I'm just trying to summarize it. I'm going to start with the town's TAM, which was prepared by Lisa LaCorey. Just give me a second. Pull that up. I'm going to take that TAM. It's a lengthy TAM, one of probably the lengthiest TAM I've ever seen. And I've highlighted portions of this TAM, both in project background description and then also some of the issues and points of the planning department. So I'll start with that now. As far as project background, the project has been before the planning board for a site plan special permit you've reviewed during several work sessions. As a result of this review, the site plan has been almost fully developed with minor changes since initial filing. However, both the planning department and the planning board have expressed some reservations regarding the proposed due to the environmental sensitivity of the site, coupled with the amount of new building gross floor area that would be facilitated. Moving down, as part of this public hearing, written comments from the ZBA offering initial comments on the project and whether they would likely be to obtain NRSP and variance approval are requested. While this initial comment offering would not be binding on the ZBA, it is requested in order to give the applicant an indication of whether the scope requires major revisions before continuing with the planning board and appearing before the ZBA for a formal determination. Then I read into the record already the relief requested. The project description, buildings. The existing buildings include a 2-story clubhouse, 1-story bathhouse and sailing center, a 1-story 3-bedroom cottage, a 1-story frame storage building, a 1-story marina building for utilities and storage, a 1-story residence building for staff, a 1-story workshop building with storage. The proposal is to demolish 6 of the existing buildings and to construct 5 new buildings, a 2-story clubhouse, a 1-story bathhouse, a 2-story sailing center, a 2-story staff residence, and a 2-story workshop. The 538 square foot existing marina building is proposed to remain. The 7 existing buildings will be reduced to 6 buildings, and the gross square footage, GFA, is proposed to be increased by 8,053 square feet, or 43%. The existing and proposed buildings, along with their gross square footage, are listed in Table 1. I'm not going to go through Table 1. It's on the record. It's in the TAM. But I will point out that the largest increase of the square footage is related to the clubhouse. Then we have Table 1A of the TAM. Again, I'm not going to read a specific part of these TAMs. I'm going to reference them as dimensions of proposed buildings. As we go down, we look at the sanitary waste, and I'll read that. The existing sanitary systems predate and do not comply with existing town and Suffolk County Department of Health Services requirements. The 3 existing sanitary systems proposed to be pumped clean, removed, and replaced on site with 2 IA low nitrogen waste treatment disposal systems in order to meet the minimum SCDHS and town minimum wastewater design standards. Some of the parking and existing tennis courts are supposed to be reconfigured. Extensive fill is proposed to help meet the minimum separation to groundwater standards for wastewater treatment siting. The existing development predates and does not conform to the town site plan drainage standards. The proposal is to install a drainage system that complies with the town minimum 2-inch rainfall storage capacity requirements. See grading and drainage plan and drainage details. I'm not going to reference every drawing in this because some of them have been updated. I'll come back to that with the updated drawings, and I'll reference those. The proposed, okay, so that's that. That's the drainage. The parking, loading, and areas and access. There are approximately 40 non-defined parking stalls in the existing site, a few of which are located within the Abraham's Landing Road right-of-way, and a few located along Bendico Road. None of the spaces are ADA compliant. The proposal is to relocate, reconfigure, and expand the existing parking area from 40 to 78 and to provide 4 ADA accessible spaces. The boat basin is to remain. Tennis courts. There are 8 existing tennis courts, 2 in each block marked on the survey as tennis courts. 4 of the existing tennis courts are proposed to be rebuilt and relocated slightly in order to accommodate other changes proposed on site. The remaining 4 are proposed to be renovated in place. There's a statement on utilities. I don't think that's that important to us at this point, although all the utilities will be buried and brought into the clubhouse and distributed thereafter. The earthwork, mass grading, and fill. The project will require excavation to remove the existing septic system and to install the proposed IA septic systems, stormwater, dry wells, and buildings. The proposal includes importation and placement of 5,467 cubic yards of clean fill to raise the grade to achieve a minimum separation to groundwater for the leaching and septic rings and to raise the ground elevation in area of proposed clubhouse, bathhouse, and sailing center. Most of the importation of fill is needed to accommodate the minimum distance to groundwater requirements for the septic systems. Building coverage. The existing building coverage, total coverage, and clearing all exceed the maximum permitted by the zoning code. As per the revised proposed condition survey prepared by George Walbert Surveyors, last revised 10/8/24. There is a new one which I'll reference later. The proposal is to reduce the building and total coverage amounts slightly. As per areas design, revegetation, and planting plans identified, last revised 10/9/24. The proposal is to increase the amount of land by 53,566 square feet, or approximately 1.2 acres. And then associated with that is a table 1B, building coverage, total coverage, and clearing, which I won't go in total detail. There is a statement on construction phases. I'm not going to address that at this point because we're looking at NRSP and area variances. So the variance in NRSP required, the entire project requires a natural resources special permit, 3 variances from front lot line, Abraham's Landing Road, and 17 variants from natural feature minimum setbacks, as described below. Comparisons to existing buildings are provided, and all new buildings must meet the minimum yard, dune crest, and wetland setbacks as specified in 255-440, 255-430, and 255-1110 of the town's code. As far as the dune crest 150-foot setback, 8 variances are required from the minimum 150-foot dune crest setback specified in section 255-440 of the East Hampton Town Code are highlighted in yellow in table 2. The clubhouse, decks and walkways, bathhouse, sailing center, and northwest tennis courts and northeast tennis courts. The concrete pad west of the clubhouse and the new deck of the walkway to the dock will require variances. An existing cottage storage building, concrete walkway, and sanitary fields would do not meet the 150 dune crest setbacks are proposed to be removed. This work is part of the NRSP, is a part of the NRSP review, but does not require variances. 2 new tennis court gazebos are proposed, but do not require variances as they exceed minimum setbacks. As I say, this is an involved project. We have table 2, requested NRSP variances from top of dune crest. Again, that's, I'm not going to go through it in each item, but it's part of the record. Regarding the wetlands, 9 variances are required from minimum wetland setbacks as highlighted in yellow in table 3, and included variances from 150 wetland setbacks for 2 proposed septic systems and 100-foot minimum wetland setbacks for new staff residence, workshop, northwest tennis courts, northeast tennis courts with respect to the bulkhead, the generator and concrete pad associated with the staff residence, a transformer and RPZ near the westerly border of the property and new parking area close to the bulkhead. Other proposed structures in the vicinity of the wetlands, but which do not require variances, are also listed. That's in table 3. Dimensional yard setbacks. The property has 2 front yards. 2 front yards, Gardner's Bay lot line and Abraham's Landing Road. The Bendigo Road lot line on the easterly property boundary opposite Abraham's Landing Road are classified as rear lot lines. The proposed clubhouse decks and associated concrete pad require front yard setback variances from Abraham's Landing Road, as highlighted in yellow in table 5. All right. The existing conditions and history. I want to go through this because I think this goes to the uniqueness of this property. The Devon Yacht Club was originally established in 1908 as a Gardner's Bay Boat Club and has been in operation as a membership club for over a century. All right, I'm going to skip down to environmental features and zones. The project will meet all FEMA requirements on this property as required by FEMA and flood zones. As far as the coastal erosion hazard, CHA, the northernmost portion of the property is seaward of the coastal erosion hazard area limit line, and includes the existing and proposed clubhouse, the existing bathhouse and sailing center, the proposed bathhouse, the proposed sailing center, the proposed ramp and deck leading to the existing dock, the proposed walkways and ramp associated with the aforementioned buildings, and west of the proposed clubhouse and concrete pad and buried propane tanks. The Peconic Bay Critical Environmental Area, the entire property is within Peconic Bay Critical Environmental Area. Local, as far as LWRP, Local Waterfront Revitalization Act, the entire property is within the town's local waterfront revitalization program area, and the application requires town planning department to assess its consistency with the LWRP policies and prepare a coastal assessment. And town and state protected natural features. The property contains extensive town and state protected natural features, including duneland, beach vegetation, freshwater wetlands, and primary watershed lands to Gardner's Bay. Now I'm skipping down to the planning department's analysis and recommendations for the board's consideration. The purpose of the project is to explain the applicant's September 12, 2022 project narrative is to upgrade the facility, improve resiliency and protection of natural resources. The TAM goes into stating it. I'm not going to read it in its entirety, is there. Again, I'm going to skip down. The Devon Yacht Club and the existing structures are part of a long-standing institution in the town of East Hampton. No change or use or increase in club membership is proposed. The proposal is to reduce the building coverage by 266 square feet and total coverage by 1,798 square feet. The building gross floor area is proposed to increase by 8,053 square feet, or 43%. Approximately 53,718 square feet, or more than an acre of revegetation, is proposed, which will reduce the total lot clearing of the site from 231,588 square feet to 177,840 square feet. Regarding the local waterfront revitalization plan, LWP, other than the aforementioned dock and jetties, the shoreline across Devon Yacht Club and in the area referred to as Reach 4 in the LWRP remains relatively undisturbed. However, as depicted in the aforementioned Google Earth Pro aerial image, the dune area between the existing clubhouse and the beach appears denuded and disturbed. As far as the coastal assessment and resiliency plan, as indicated, the shoreline along Devon Yacht Club are within the time frame was found to be stable. And thus, neither the LWRP nor the CARP studies identified the Devon Yacht Club area as high risk for coastal erosion, and both studies characterize the area as having a relatively stable shoreline. The Devon Yacht Club proposal to relocate structures farther from the shoreline and due crest and to meet the exceed minimum design flood elevations to the in the coastal AE zones will enhance coastal resiliency and is generally consistent with the approach set forth in the CARP. Proposed impacts on the dune. In summary, it says building coverage and lot coverage are proposed to decrease slightly, but accommodating the large amount of development on the site makes meeting minimum dune crest setbacks impossible. Consideration should be given to the appropriate amount of development for the property in the context of the environmental constraints. And it addresses the clubhouse. The ZBA should consider the environmental improvements improved by the 19.6 feet increased setbacks is sufficient to offset the increased 5,652 square feet of development. It is also a concern that regarding proposed north end of the clubhouse at the top of the dune crest has a potential to destabilize the dune. I'm going to move on. Okay, in summary, the increase in GFA site-wide is 43%, and a 60% increase in GFA is proposed for the clubhouse. There's going to be an issue of how, in looking forward, how we're going to look at this. But these are large increases as compared to the existing facilities, and the existing facility built before zoning already represents a level of development that would be difficult to achieve if applying modern code standards. 255-860 of the town code restricts expansion of non-conforming buildings by 50% cap. This rule does not apply here because existing non-conforming buildings are proposed to be demolished, relocated, and replaced with completely new upgraded buildings. These buildings will perform the same functions on the same site, but new structures in a new slightly modified locations. The planning department is concerned that grading this dune is not warranted. Oh, this is going back. Let me just, that's right. It's talking about the dune. The planning department is concerned that grading this dune is not warranted and recommends that the disturbance to this feature should be minimized or avoided. A portion of this area is proposed to be revegetated as depicted in the area's design landscape plan. At the very least, a revegetation plan to restore the entire area proposed to regrading disturbed would help improve coastal resiliency and protection. In short, the proposal to relocate existing buildings landward from the dune crest will help enhance coastal resiliency. However, the small amount of relocation coupled with significant increase GFA remains a concern. Flood hazard overlay. In summation, she points out, in short, the project increases the safety of the yacht club buildings by meeting the current FEMA standards and FEMA recommendations for construction seaward of the Limois line. Given the expected life services of the structure, consideration should also be given to projected sea level rise impacts and projected higher base flood elevations. Now we're going to go on to the wetlands variances. Wetland setbacks, as indicated in Table 3, 9 proposed structures require variances from the wetland setbacks, and additional proposed structures are within NRSP jurisdiction. These are discussed below. Staff residence, a 2-story staff residence is proposed 12 feet from the wetlands and will require a variance from the 100-foot wetlands setbacks set forth in the town code. The workshop, a 2-story, 807 square foot workshop, is proposed 1.2 feet from the wetlands and will require variance from 100 foot wetland setback set forth in section 255-420C. We discussed the 2 septic systems, the generator, concrete pad, tennis courts. The northeast tennis courts related to bulkhead proposed to be located 40 feet from the wetlands, and the northwest tennis courts proposed to be located 38.4 feet from the wetlands require variances from minimum 100-foot wetland setback. Additional parking is proposed to help meet the needs of the club. The parking in the western section of the lot is classified as reconstruction of the existing lot and does not require a wetland set variance. However, the parking area to the east between tennis courts is new and is approximately 49 feet from the wetlands associated with the bulkhead and requires a variance from the minimum 100-foot wetlands. Approximately 5,467 cubic yards of fill are proposed to be imported to the site. Fill surfacing the grading activities and proposed is close to 1 foot from the wetlands at the closest point in the proposed parking lot. This remains a concern of the planning board as well. Efforts should be made to increase the distance between grading and wetland areas while also ensuring that appropriate construction protections are installed. So their assessment on the impact of the wetlands. The application generally proposes to install drainage where none exists, relocate buildings and structures landward from Gardeners Bay, and in an upland direction from the freshwater wetlands. Partly counterbalancing these positive features of the project, 7 of the building structures are proposed to meet less than half of their minimum wetlands setbacks. As stated, the site is severely constrained and a large amount of development is proposed. The staff housing, one of the positive environmental features of the project is proposed removal of the staff residence, the associated septic system, and head-in parking, which in their present location not only fail to meet minimum wetland setbacks, but also bisect the wetlands. The planning department has found that the freshwater wetlands planting plan generally acceptable, but pending details required regarding the construction protocol, bridge removal, and other potential changes. The planting and restoration plan may necessitate additional comments. However, the planning department supports a proposal to continue to provide staff housing to meet the needs of the facility. They go into the possibility of moving the staff housing off-site, but they are in that statement is there. The septic system, another positive environmental feature of the project, is the proposed removal of 3 pre-existing septic systems. All right. In regarding to the tennis courts, they have a concern with the tennis courts. However, the lands occupied by the tennis courts displaces area that could otherwise accommodate new structures in conforming locations. During an earlier review of the application, the planning department suggested removing 1 or more tennis courts from the property in order to achieve improved wetland and dune crest setbacks for the main structures proposed. The applicant has responded that the project will not go forward if any of the existing 8 tennis courts are deleted from the plans. The planning department notes that 8 tennis courts are legally existing structures on the property. Regarding the filling and grading, the 5,467 cubic yards of fill proposed for the site as close to 1 foot from the wetlands is large matter for concern. The applicant has explained that the fill is required to allow the drainage structures to achieve a minimum 2 foot above highest groundwater elevations to allow the dry sand to filter out particulates and contaminants. In short, the proposal generally improves the performance of the site with respect to wetland setbacks, habitat quality, and stormwater management in accordance with town standards and improved wastewater quality discharges. It goes on about the Abraham's Landing front yard setback variances. And I'll just note that the existing condition plans, the ARIS design depicts the edge of pavement for Abraham's Landing Road approximately 60 feet from its subject property, thus providing additional buffer between the proposed structures and the street. By way of comparison, the existing clubhouse is 5.8 feet from the Abraham's Landing Road front yard lot line. Dune restoration and revegetation plan implementation. However, as already noted, additional planting in the vicinity of the dune and dock area proposed to be regraded would increase protection of the dune and improve resiliency. Specifically, the planning department recommends that the dune in the vicinity of the clubhouse not be graded and instead be revegetated. I'm going to move on from the TAM for that. That's a lot to cover. After that, the zoning board came up with, as a result of that November hearing, 8 concerns or 8 questions for the applicant to answer. The applicant did answer those concerns. I'm not going to go into, I'm going to go into the documents presented, but I'm going to move then into the planning department's response to those answers and go through that in summary, not in detail, but in summary. But I will go through, we'd be here all night if I went through Tony's memorandum of law. But it's there on the record, and it's inclusive of what I'm talking about. So the planning department in that response responded, and we'll get the gist of it as we go along. The revised the items that received as in subsequent to the TAM and with the response of the applicant are the revised grading and drainage plan prepared by ARIS Design dated December 10th, 2024. The cut and fill diagram prepared by ARIS Design dated December 10th, 2024. Revised cut and fill calculations prepared by ARIS Design dated December 6th, 2024. The renderings prepared by ARIS Design dated December 12, 2024. Updated tables of requested variances revised by InterScience Research Associates Incorporated December 12, 2024. Lists of project benefits prepared by InterScience Research December 12, 24. Revised clubhouse sanitary layout prepared by TF Engineering, last revised November 15th, 2024. The hydrology analysis prepared by TF Engineering dated December 11th, 2024. The structural engineering analysis prepared by TF Engineering dated December 11th, 2024. And the environmental assessment of proposed project prepared by Lee Wisher, December 13th, 24. And the applicant's memorandum of law in support of application dated December 16th, 2024. First question was to request a further review of and more explanation of the existing and proposed drainage system on the site, including recharge to the groundwater and wetlands, the direction and flow of groundwater and wetlands, the future disposition of the existing drainage pipe approximate to the existing staff house. The planning department's response to the applicant's response to that is the town consulting engineer, the Rayner Group, has reviewed the existing and proposed drainage system and the materials submitted by their applicant. By memo dated 1/7/25, Vin Cordiello has found that there are outstanding issues for the applicant to address with respect to the grading and drainage. Nevertheless, Mr. Cordiello has found that the applicant has demonstrated that a drainage plan can be prepared and implemented for the site which conforms to the town code and typical engineering standards. And the next question was further review and discussion of impacts of the proximity of new structures to wetlands. Planning Department's response to their response was planning department assessment, except for the northeast tennis court. All the proposed structures are farther from the wetlands than the existing structures. The December 13th, 2024 submission has relocated the septic system servicing the clubhouse farther from the wetlands than the prior proposed location, also increasing the wetland setback compared to the existing system. As opined in the TAM report, the removal of the staff housing and associated septic system from the present location to a more central location is projected to have a major positive impact on the wetlands. Their removal and the proposed restoration plan will help restore and reconnect this high-quality wetland system. The Planning Department continues to request the applicant to sharpen their pencil to determine whether the plans can provide a greater setback than the 1 foot distance between the wetlands and the proposed grading and paving associated with the entranceway and parking area. We note that the existing conditions reflect only a 1 foot wetland setback in this area. However, the proposed plan calls for the imposition of fill in this area, raising the concern that there is no room for error during construction. Question 3, further review and explanation of the proposed grading throughout the site. Elevation changes and clarification of nature of grading seaward of the clubhouse deck, which has been described as a resiliency measure. Planning Department's assessment. The TAM raised concern that the proposed deck atop the walkway to the dock, it appears that the revised submission includes a reduction in the size of the proposed from 175 feet to 25 square feet. These figures need to be confirmed by the applicant, but the proposed modification will reduce the potential impacts on the dune. As indicated in the Rayner Group letter, additional information will be required for grading and drainage plan, but it appears that a plan conforming to town standards and engineering practices can be prepared. Item number 4, further review of view shed impacts and building elevations. Now, I'm not going to go into detail. This we don't go into. She doesn't go into detail either. But we note that we were given elevations of this. We have looked at it, and ultimately, it's going to be presented to the architectural review for further review. Further review. The item number 5. Further review and discussion of intensity of use. The Planning Department's assessment. During the review of the site plan special permit with the Planning Board and the variance application with the ZBA, the Planning Department has continued to question whether the application with entails a 43% increase in GFA and will require 20 variances should be evaluated as an intensification. The applicant has argued that the application does not constitute an intensification of use. As summarized above, the ZBA will need to evaluate whether the increase in GFA and non-conforming locations meets the town code variance and NRSP standards, given the substantial nature of the change in GFA. And I'll make a note here that although we are increasing the ZBA, it is clear that the applicants is taking some uses that are outside the building, moving them inside the building. I do not view this as an intensification of use because the second floor is primarily for office use. The clubhouse use and the kitchen. So the main increases are due to the kitchen and the second floor, which is mainly for offices. So that's where I'll go with that. Further review and discussion on whether variances are minimum necessary. Planning Department assessment. During the approximately two-year review, the applicant has continued to make changes to reduce the impacts on the wetlands. In the latest submission of December 2024, the wetland setback for the septic systems to serve the clubhouse was increased to a distance farther than the existing system. The two septic systems proposed represent a large improvement compared to the four existing systems in terms of wetland setbacks, depth to groundwater, and low nitrogen design. Initially, the land bridge and parking area along the Bendigo Road were not proposed for removal. But in response to the building planning board feedback, these features have been eliminated, thereby eliminating a more complete restoration of the wetlands drainage system of this area. The building area and GFA within the dune crest setback has also been reduced as part of the review process. Further review, number 7, further review and discussion of each variance are required. The planning department's assessment, in the case of the Devon Yacht Club, the applicant has argued that there are no conforming locations for all the existing improvements. The planning department does not dispute this assertion, but has raised alternatives for consideration, relocating the staff residence to another site controlled by the applicant, reducing one or more of the tennis courts, reducing building size from that which is proposed. Finally, number 8, clarification on whether construction on pilings facilitates future increases in elevation for sea level rise, and they did come back with an engineering say that it can be raised in the future. With that, sorry for that lengthy, but I think it's important. We then had a response to that, which I'm not going to go into. It's part of the record. It's a short response, and that from Essex, Hefner, Angel, Tony Pasca, counselor, regarding the submission. It's that. Now, where do we go from there? Now, we're not making a decision tonight. So we're making a recommendation to the planning board. I prepared a written statement, which, and we still have to hear comments from other members. So I'm going to make a recommendation, my recommendation to the planning board, and we'll see where we go from that. Okay. So I would say I recommend that that a letter to the planning board be sent saying that overall the ZBA views that the application with the adjustments made by the applicant meets both the area and NRSP standards. The applicant, over the period of time working with the planning department and planning board, has demonstrated that the benefit to the town and the environmental conditions have been met. All reasonable alternatives have been considered. The ZBA recognizes that 3 major concerns of the planning board are reduction of the tennis courts, and that's not limited to, but I look at these as the 3 major ones that they're concerned about. Reduction of the tennis courts to facilitate tighter program and further alternatives, amount of grading and proximity to the wetlands and off-site housing. Although the applicant has answered these concerns, any further improvements would benefit the project as it relates to the natural resources. A caution, however, to the planning board should be made that the ZBA is considering the application as a whole. Any substantial changes may have a domino effect on the process which has occurred to this date. So that's kind of a letter. I'm going to turn it over to you guys. I know it's encompassing, but Ed, I ask for your comments.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, because you just, as you read it in, you said that the ZBA considers that it meets the standards. I don't think we know that yet. For me, I think that we're in a position that there's been very positive movement on behalf of the applicant. And the applicant has pushed this forward in a way that every time they've been asked by the planning boards, there's been a response. There are a couple of sticking points. You pointed them out. They're the ones that'll have to be hashed out at a future hearing. At this point, I'm not in a position to say we think it rises to the standard that will receive an NRSP. On the other hand, I do think the positives you mentioned are all to what we're taking into consideration at this point. As it comes back in front of us with whatever the final form of presentation is going to be from Devon Yacht Club, that'll help us make our decision. But I'm agreeing in substance with what you said, only just that I don't feel that we're in a position to say we know already we can approve an NRSP.
Is that, okay, so all right, go ahead. Denise, let's hear you.
I agree with member Johan. I think, and I'm looking at this in terms of procedure, I think that all the concerns we have and the documentation we receive from the planning department and from Essex Hefter and Tony Pasca, I think everything should be forwarded to the planning board for their review. I think there's room for further review and discussion on tennis courts. I think they are reducing the building size and also the discussion of moving additional staff housing to another site. One of the things we have to look at is whether these are the minimum variances necessary. And I'm just not ready to make a decision tonight. I think that plans can provide greater setbacks. I'm just willing at this point to pass on the concerns that we have and the answers that we received. And at a later date, when they come back to us, because this project could change, then I'd be ready to make a determination, but I don't feel I can say right now that this meets the standard for a grant of variances and NRSPs.
Neither can I. The tennis courts are still an issue, I do believe. And the fill and the drainage, they say that they can make it better. I have to see that. And the flow and the drainage and the fill and any improvement. The staff housing, I think I'm fine with it there, although that could be approved upon if tennis courts were changed.
So the only thing in response I'll have to that is the applicant has made it clear that if they have to reduce a tennis court or the project doesn't go forward.
Yeah, but
That means-
that's
let me
not
just
something
finish,
we
let me
have
just
to
finish.
look at, though.
No, I understand. Let me just finish. And the staff housing is not an option. So in my mind, I look at that as a given to what we're looking at today. Is it approvable from what we're looking at today? Based on that. I understand that how it comes back to us, we don't know because the board is another entity. But as it stands today, is it approvable?
Well,
Or is there not approvable, maybe a possibility of it being approved with those, if that existing tennis court remains and this on-staff housing remains as it is today, I kind of feel that considerations have been made and alternatives have been pursued.
but they're asking for more, but not wanting to give up anything. I mean, and I'm not making a decision yet. I'm still in a thought process, but by eliminating tennis courts, you can place or accommodate new structures in more conforming locations. And you can also have better wetland setbacks for the parking driveway, reduce overall density. So for me, I think, I don't know, reducing, we have to look at, are these the minimum variances necessary? And if there are no other alternatives and nothing else exists, but I think plans can provide, I think this is, I'm not ready to make a determination. I don't think as of right now, it meets the standard for grant.
I could tell you what I was thinking before this, and that is that maybe we weren't exactly asked this, but is the presentation that's been made by the Devon Yacht Club up to this point worthy of moving forward for a ZBA hearing in the future? And my answer is yes. I think there's things that we can then discuss as you are now. Typically, when we get something in front of us, we will have some more back and forth. Between now and then, there may be some adjustments on their part,
Right.
but I think the overall effort is one to improve, whether it's setbacks, whether it's the conditions, the parking. It all is, an effort is being made to improve it. We can discuss how it could be improved more, how it can be better. But at this point, I'm willing to say that what I've seen makes it worthy of coming back in
So
front of us for a hearing.
I will respond, and this is how I
I'm
look
not
at it. I
willing
will
to say
respond to
that.
that there's already a 2-year process with the planning board
Mhm.
that has dealt with a lot of these issues, such as parking and stuff like that. And they've come to us at a point to advise them. And I don't think it's our job to tweak parking or whatever. We can
But-
see if there's alternatives. But
Right.
I think I believe we vetted some of that out in this process that we had.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel with that. That's how I feel. I think that even with those 8 questions, we're the ones who came back with the 8 questions.
Right.
Right. One of which was, are these the minimum variances necessary? These are big variances they're asking for.
And they responded to them.
Correct.
Mhm.
They responded to it, but it doesn't mean it meets the standard for grant of a variance.
Even intensity of use could be interpreted differently. They're making the kitchen bigger. Why do they need to make the kitchen bigger? There's going to be no change in use. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to debate it now because I don't think it's right
No,
for us to debate it, but I do
we're
think
being
that
asked to do this.
that one of the questions when that came up about intensity of use, about increasing things, was to make it more usable because the kitchen's undersized, office space is undersized, meeting space undersized. I think the argument on behalf of Devin was they're not increasing the membership, and
The
therefore,
membership.
I understand there's just questions to be asked, but that could be part of the conditions in the future. I'm just saying is that the presentation made is one that's worthy of a discussion. It is not, to me, one that's unreasonable. I think everything we've seen has been reasonable and positive moving forward. I think it's worthy of us having a hearing and discussing these ideas that now are coming up.
But is that what we're being asked to do? Aren't
I'm
we
not
being
sure.
asked to go back to the
Hearing
planning
when?
board with our concerns and recommendations? I mean, are we here tonight to say, the planning board hasn't finished their process? They're coming to us for recommendations. We're letting them know our discussion tonight, what we're concerned about, what we're thinking about. It's not our job tonight to bypass the planning board.
No, but I do
We
think,
still have to wait for their process to end.
but the document.
That's when it's going to come back to us for a
That's
final
correct.
decision.
But
So I
it's
think-
not, we're not
I think
ready to
that-
rule on that
But
tonight.
my understanding, and council, you can shed some light on this if you want. My understanding is that they're looking for directive on us, is if the project today, would the zoning board look at it as an approval or a denial? And that's what I think is what we're supposed to come back to them with. And council, I maybe ask your opinion on
I can
this.
answer that. I haven't seen the final drainage plan. I'm very concerned about that drainage plan and the flows.
But we have the town's engineer saying that the
They can
drainage
do
plan
one.
with its concern,
could
with certain
do
concerns, can be met, adequately met. So we have the town engineer already opining on it.
I
I think
think,
the facts of this case are there.
I think these are not the minimum variances necessary. It's one of the things we have to look at. And I think there's
But
alternatives
who's
that
we?
can be
Because,
looked at.
and again, we just
I mean, every
debate. It's just
application
debate,
that comes before, these are very large variances.
But when you say the word "we," you're referring to the planning board tweaking it and coming back to us.
I'm looking at it like they're not done yet. We're going back to the planning board with what our concerns are. Maybe they'll work these things out with the, I don't know. But I don't think it's my job to decide tonight. I want to see where this goes in terms of the process.
Roy, do you think you could read again? You started at the
Say that again,
beginning.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, can you read out loud again? When you started, you read from the TAM, the request from the planning department to the zoning board as part of this process?
He's saying I can't, I'm having a hard time hearing it. It's an echo.
You want to read the
request from
beginning
the
of the
TAM.
TAM?
Us asking us to look.
It's so weird because I sound so loud to myself, but you can't hear me. At the beginning, you started by reading from the TAM, the request, like,
You want me to read that?
yeah, again, for what Lisa LaCory as the planner was guiding the zoning board to do during this process.
The project has been before the planning board for site plan special permit review during several work sessions. As a result of this review, the site plan has been almost fully developed with minor changes since initial filing. However, both the planning department and planning board have expressed some reservations regarding the proposal due to the environmental sensitivity of the site coupled with the amount of new building gross floor area areas. And I think that we as a zoning board owe it to them to come up with a more succinct decision than we're discussing right now.
I've already said how I feel.
And can we answer I believe that based on the evidence that we have in front of us, even the town planning department says that the environmental conditions are better, are substantially better, that resiliency is being met.
Yeah.
That all their concerns, they lay out their concerns, and I even brought them forward. So I think we, as a zoning board, owe it to them to be more accurate in our recommendation to them.
Okay, so,
Well, we still don't, it's a still big increase in GFA.
I mean, if
And the
you're not ready to
50%
do that,
is-
maybe we should
Hey, go
pause
to
and come
public
back
hearing.
another.
If you're saying we're ready for public hearing,
We had
okay.
2 public hearings.
Well, what are we going to do
We're
now?
not ready for
Now we're
public hearing
making
now.
a decision?
We'll see the
We're not
drainage
making,
plan
we're
that
making a
they say
recommendation.
to do.
Will the
Right.
zoning board, if given today, is there a possibility of the zoning board approving it? What's your opinion? Is the zoning board saying, at this point, from what we see, the conditions have been vetted, it's what I see, have been vetted, they've been questioned, they've been improved in the process.
Yeah.
To the point where even the planning department is saying that this is improved.
but what you just said now clarifies one point of it, and then you said, is there a possibility that we'd be approving it? I can say that, yes. There's a possibility we're going to be improving it. I think there'll be some small points that have to, maybe not small points, but points that have to be discussed. But when I look at what's been presented, I think it's been largely positive, positive, positive. And if you ask me whether this comes in front of us, if it has a possibility to be approved, I would say absolutely yes. It has a possibility to be improved, but I do think there'll be some questions by board members that still have to be discussed in the future by us. Other than that, I mean, I'm not prepared to say that it's an absolute approval, but I am saying that it's a very positive project. I consider that most of it's been thought out for a very long time. A lot of work has been done on both sides, and it's ready for us to look at. I think it's very possible that this can be approved. That's my feeling. Now, if that's not absolute enough, I don't know where the next step is, but I do think if it comes in front of us, the possibility is very strong it's going to be improved.
So when you say comes in front of us, what is that step?
Well, I don't know. Is it
That's
going
what I
to
wanna
come
know.
back another time? Or is there going to be any future hearing? Roy, is there going to be any other time they're going to be in front of us?
Well, I'll make a suggestion.
Yeah.
And if we're not prepared to come, seems like I'm not hearing that we are prepared to do what the planning board's asking us. So maybe we should pause and come back and look at it and come back and have another discussion.
A discussion here, public discussion. This is what we'll have,
Well,
another hearing, another
By
review.
public discussion.
But but it doesn't seem like the board in a whole looked at this as a process that is looking for more definitive.
Mhm.
So maybe we need to go back and look at this more closely.
Okay.
What's your recommendation, guys? I'm asking you.
Look at it more closely in what respect. that
Well,
we're gonna-
or come back with,
Well, I've already said my concerns. So regardless of what the rest of the board votes on this, I have an issue with the not eliminating tennis courts to accommodate new structures and more conforming locations based on the variance standards we have to meet and NERSIP standards. So that's where I am. So if everybody, I'm one person, I'm one voice.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
no,
that
no,
the-
I'm
that
just
the tennis court
saying,
is still a concern.
If we, that is my concern. So that's what I'm letting you know.
And still the drainage was running like right
think
by
the
the
drainage-
tennis court.
yeah.
Well, you think it's fine. And he says it can be made good. So let's see how it can be made good.
I think that's onerous. I think that's onerous. If the town engineer saying that the concerns, if they can be met, that means that, I think that implies that they will be met. I think there's a
I
reasonable,
wanna
I
take
think there's
that
a
on
reasonable
implication.
way to look at that, rather than say, put the applicant through the further expense of having to go do a full-out design when they don't know if it's going to get approved.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, but I don't know if, well, like I said, I'm one voice. There's four of us.
I found the portion in the TAM that I wanted to read that would redirect you guys. I mean, you're pretty close now, but in the TAM, it does say, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. While the application remains incomplete and a lead agency pursuant to SECRA has not been established, that's also at the date of this. I think maybe it was, at least there was a secret determination maybe made, I'm not sure, in terms of designation. A public hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals has been recommended by the Planning Department in order to obtain feedback from the ZBA on the overall concept and scope, likelihood of meeting the variance standards, and to facilitate a dialogue between the two town agencies with the greatest discretionary review authority. This process is intended to promote communication and coordination consistent with Section 255-111P2 of the East Hampton Town Code, quote, to promote effective communication and proper coordination across town departments, committees, and boards, as well as with county and state regulations and agencies. As part of this public hearing, written comments from the ZBA offering initial comments on the project and whether they would be likely to obtain NRSP and variance approval are requested. While this initial comment offering would not be binding on the ZBA, it is requested in order to give the applicant an indication of whether the scope requires major revisions before continuing with the planning board and appearing before ZBA for a formal determination.
So I can answer.
I read that in.
I know you did, but that,
Roy, I can answer that question, yes, because that question said it really dealt with whether or not it's possible that we are going to move forward rather than we have an absolute decision made tonight. I think it's a positive application. I think that it's very likely to be approved, and I think that these things that are being discussed can be worked out. I'm not sure how, and I'm not sure how adamantly people are. But that statement that was just read by counsel is one that I can easily say yes to. That statement is the one that says that looking for our advice, do we think it's a sustainable application? Do we think that it can move forward and meet approval? I think the answer is yes. I think that's true. But there will be some other discussion among board members, obviously. But that's not also the last, as it said, not asking us to make a decision, but to make a recommendation. The recommendation is that the application, for me, should move forward. Back to the planning board with our sort of approval that it's in the right direction. I think the way that was worded was right along with my line of thinking here, that the application has been done well, and that it's been presented well, and that we have things to discuss, but that it's moved in a very positive way, and it should certainly proceed. Go back to the planning board, come back for our final approval, whatever the process is going to be procedurally.
I'm going to reiterate, there's been a lot of evidence put before us. We held 2 hearings. They were announced as hearings. They were clear they were hearings. We've looked at the evidence just as if we were holding a ZBA hearing. The evidence is before us. The applicant's responses are before us. The information is all before us. And it's been tweaked. Now, regarding the tennis courts and the off-site housing, the applicant made a stance on that. With all that evidence is before us, and I'm going to reiterate, we as a zoning board owe it to the planning board to have a more definitive, whether it's an approval or not approval. But I think that we owe it to the planning board to have a more succinct answer. Then we're going to wait to see what they do and come back to us. That's not what they're asking us to do.
Well, the tennis
So if
courts
we
are a
need more time
concern,
to think
so if
about
the
it and dig
concern.
into it, we
I
can
mean,
come back
it
to
can
it.
Then I
come
would
back
have
to
to
us,
say
but-
no.
I'm going to have to say no to certain aspects of this plan. I mean, it can come back to us just like every other application we have every week. We review. I mean, this isn't a special circumstance. This is an application that we're looking at. We're looking at the same standards for things to be met. So I'm certainly not going to hold up this project. It can come back to us for our vote.
On the other hand, if you're saying let's take a pause and come back and we take a look at all the evidence and presented and make our decision, I'm willing to do that. We don't have a future hearing. What's been presented is what we're ruling on.
As the project stands today, does it have a likelihood of getting approval? That's what they're asking for. Is there a likelihood, as it stands before us, with all the evidence before us, does it have a likelihood? That's the answer that we're obligated to answer.
Okay, so I'm saying yes to that. Like,
And I'm
I'm
saying no.
saying there are certain aspects of this that I'm going to approve and certain requests that I'm going to deny.
Okay, so then what I recommend us doing is coming back the next hearing or next whatever, we gotta go through this. We gotta get this right? So if we need to come back.
What does
and if
getting
you
it
have-
right mean? That we all have to agree that this is a,
No, I
Great
think we
project?
have to be consistent as a board, but I think that if you're saying there are yes and no's to your requests,
just like
then
any
come
other
back to us
application
and
that
list
comes
them, and
before
list
me.
them.
Sometimes we
Okay.
say no to a swimming pool, but we say yes to the rest of the
That's
project.
okay, so we're not, it sounds like we're not prepared to do that tonight. So if we need to come back and list them, let's do it. Let's do it
You
and get
mean,
this right for the planning board. I really mean that.
you mean have another public hearing? Is
No,
that
not
what you-
have a, we
No.
had the evidence
Discuss
before.
again what we
Discussion.
just discussed tonight? I'm
come
not
back
gonna
with,
change-
no,
I'm not
come
gonna
back the
change
way
my
we
mind.
do, the more we do a post-hearing decision. Come
Yeah,
back
I'm
with
not
We're
our
making a
position.
decision then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of have made a decision. I mean,
I think it
I don't know how
needs
many
more
more
work.
So I
times I'm
don't know
going to say
how,
this.
so we have two approvals and two denials.
Correct.
I
I
think,
want to look at it that way.
Go ahead.
I think that a letter to the planning board could say that the board is split on these things.
Yeah,
And that's, I mean,
Okay.
that's what it is. That's the reality. That there are these point X, Y, and Z, the board is split 2-2. Then maybe there'll be a fifth member when we come to a public hearing, but this is the condition as it is right now.
Okay.
And
I can
leave that to
accept
them.
that.
Do you have more information in terms of what items are put on for that letter that you're gonna write?
I'm not going to write the letter. But that's, yeah, I don't know how, I guess how specific would be, how do you want the letter to come? But it sounds like location, like the number of tennis courts and the locations of structures because of that is a sticking point for two members.
can be in more conforming locations if you eliminate one or two tennis courts.
And that seems like the major sticking point that the planning board should then
That's
wrestle.
my major sticking point.
That's what it sounds like the letters.
Anything else?
Well, the drainage, just a statement saying, oh, yeah, we can do better, necessary.
I mean, you could say that you want the drainage to be addressed by, prior to, it being deemed complete and moving forward to the zoning board of appeals, something like that. Since it seems like the engineer said they're almost there, they just need to fix some things. You could just sort of say, we want them to do that
Yeah.
prior to coming back to us.
All right, maybe we should draft something up and see how it looks.
Yeah, why don't we do that? I can, with Tyler's assistance, try to draft something based on
Tyler's going to be sorry he said anything.
and then let you guys look at it. And then if you think it's not fleshed out enough, and also with the benefit maybe of the planner who concocted this whole concept to get the feedback, if Lisa LaCory thinks it would be helpful if we get anything else, then we'll do it again.
Yeah.
But if not, then maybe we don't have to.
Okay.
Is that okay with everyone?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And for the record, I did bring forth those three concerns.
What?
In my letter, I brought forth those three concerns.
Yeah, but you're asking us to vote.
I didn't ask you to vote. I asked you to
Well,
recommend to the voting. to the
sort of
planning
vote.
board.
Well, that's what I'm recommending. It's on record what I
That's fine.
recommended.
Well, good. All right. Do we have other things? on
Yeah,
the
we got
agenda?
other stuff to do.
Thank you, guys.
It's a journey down a rabbit hole.
Okay, we have a modification, Palma 45 Seaview Avenue in Montauk, tax map number 300-51-1-3.2. And that's a modification of a 2023 determination.
Yeah, so this is a modification of a permit issued in 2023. What they're asking for is very straightforward. They just want to swap the building plans from one architect to another. I looked them over. There's no changes to even the interior of the building. They're just swapping architects. And the other thing is updating to the most recent survey, which was the one that was approved by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. And there's no change to like the size and sanitary or the location or anything like that. So both requests are really just swapping one set of plans for the other. And there's no substantial changes that the zoning board would even look at in those plans. So that's what it is.
I would be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I guess I am, but why change architects if you're not going to change anything?
Who knows?
And sometimes it's just like, the electrical stuff and the things that we don't normally ask for.
Yeah, okay, we'll change architects when we get the next modification. Right.
Make a motion on this?
We need a motion?
No,
Well, yeah, but
No,
Yeah, we do need a motion for that, don't we?
I think you,
You're approving a
Oh, you do?
modification,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I'll
You're not
make
approving
it.
the modification itself.
isn't the
but you're approving-
resolution the motion? Okay.
Right?
Usually the resolution is.
Well, this
what we
is-
adopt.
Well, this is a no impact modification.
Yeah, but you'd be, I guess, approving the determination to be written. Like,
Yeah, oh, I see.
do
What?
you normally do that?
No,
Okay,
No.
then we're good.
I'll draft the.
Okay.
Yes,
and
okay.
adopt it.
Right, fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have extension of time.
Don't we have more? Thanks.
Later.
Just lose my, did you still?
We have 9035 Holding Court at 113 South Edgemere, Montauk, Suffolk tax map number 300-28-4-23, extension of a 2019 determination.
So this property is actually, the construction's done. You can see it on the aerial, the construction's done. I went to the property, I think last year to check it for a CO. And it's ready for a CO, but apparently they had issues getting PSE&G to connect the electricity to the property. So they needed an extension of time in order to get their CO.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
Okay. So for 90-35 Holding Corp., 113 South Edgemere Street in Montauk, tax map 300-028-04-23, make a motion to approve the extension of time.
Second.
Concur.
Concur. My blood sugar is low.
Next is Stein, 15 Treasure Island Drive, Amagansett, Suffolk tax map number 300-175-5-30, and that's an extension of a 2016 determination.
Yes, this is a 2016 application. There was some work at the rear of the property. It denied a swimming pool, but approved a bunch of other structures. And they're just trying to extend it to maintain their valid permit. They actually have another active permit right now that'll probably be in front of the board and soon, I hope.
It was on an agenda at one point.
Yes, it was, and then they pulled it because they wanted to make some changes that we had recommended. So the board should be hearing this, the new application soon, but they want to maintain the old one as valid.
I'm
I
okay
don't have
with
any
it.
concerns.
Okay,
Okay with it?
sounds good.
Right, make a motion. In the matter of Stein, 15 Treasure Island Drive, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 175-5-30. I make a motion to approve the extension of time for the 2016 determination.
Second.
Concur.
Concur, thank you.
Give Denise the second. No.
That was it, Treasure Island, right?
Yeah, that was Treasure Island.
Next, we have
About
Swartz and
22nd.
Hain at 44 Cliff Road, Amagansett. That's in Suffolk tax map number 300-173-2-18.1, the extension of 2020 determination.
Yes, this is a somewhat recent application that they got additions to this house. I think a swimming pool was included with it as well. They were combining two lots into one. They haven't done anything on the property yet. They're just maintaining their permit as valid.
There was like a whole big scenic easement.
Large scenic
with it,
easement
yeah,
I think on the east side of the lot.
Yeah, on the dune.
There's some pretty substantial dunes over there. they've combined the lots into one tax map parcel, but they haven't done any other work yet.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Okay. In the matter of Schwartz and Hain, 44 Cliff Road, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-173-2-18.1, I make a motion to approve the extension of time for the 2020 determination.
Second.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. We have draft minutes of Tuesday, February 4th, 2025.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes, the draft minutes from Tuesday, February 4th, 2025 for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals.
I'll second.
Okay.
Concur.
Concur.
Thank you. Resolutions. We're not doing water view tonight, right? So we have David and Kyra Barry at 169 Atlantic Avenue.
Sure. I'll just quickly, you'll remember this application board. This is lot basically on the dune front, but it's accessed by a 950 foot access roads from Atlantic Avenue. You also remember this is a historic, although not designated house, over 100 years old. So the whole structure was very non-conforming, but did not trigger, the work proposed did not trigger to be made conforming. The guts of the application were to do, I think, a 230 square foot expansion of the second story, but it was over the existing structure already. They're converting a porch. Originally, there were 9 variances, 3 of them related to the solar panels on the garage. I think 2 or 3 other variances were removed. And I think the board approved the entire application, also taking into account the revegetation plan by a unanimous vote of 5 people. So I'm going to make a motion in the matter of David and Kira Barry, 169 Atlantic Avenue, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-178-2-4. I make a motion to approve the determination as written.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Thank you. Concur. We have Ron Donnelly and Sahai and Peril. So Sahai at 45 Mako Lane. I'm against.
Thank you. This was, I believe this was called a modification with a public hearing. There had been an approved plan for a complete redevelopment of the property. And they did come back, I think they switched architects and made some modifications, which made the house slightly bigger and changed the variances a little bit. This was approved. There was discussion about how much re-veg was happening. I think we went, I think we figured that out over the course of the hearing, but I'm going to make a motion in the case of Ronan Donnelly and Parul Sahai, 45 Mako Lane, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-175-6-22. Make a motion to approve the determination as written.
Second.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have Hokusai LLC at 24 Sammy's Beach Road.
We're not doing that,
Tabled, right?
but that's tabled.
What?
I think it's
We're
tabled.
not doing it.
Oh, we're not- oh, that's right. You didn't.
We don't have it, yeah.
But we did. I thought I saw it.
We made a
You
decision.
did?
I thought I saw it. I must have looked at Donnelly
I'm
and
going
Sahai
to
twice.
adjourn.
Sahai, Hokusai.
I want to make
you
a
know.
motion to adjourn the zoning board of appeals meeting on 2/11/25 at 8:33.
I'll second.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you.